Hello again. So, praise be to Jesus, all glory to Him. There's a couple more topics that just about the search for truth, because I'm looking at just checking my videos just to re-go over what I actually said, and I just wanted to bring up. So the flat Earth topic again. I wanted to bring that up and from a different angle, and just the sort of a couple more things that happen to, like, if you're doing research, advice for researchers, because I was just looking at the flat Earth topic again, just a couple of videos, and there's a point that I forgot to make in the last videos, which was that, well, you can use that as a case study. Let's say use flat Earth as a case study where, like, there's a certain amount of, let's say that there is a truth about the nature of the globe or the flat plane or the Earth that we live on, from whatever perspective you might have. There's information that exists, or there's a truth, sorry, it's a truth that exists. And there's a certain amount of information on that reality. Let's say certain arguments that people will put forward, and there's a whole bunch of arguments. A whole bunch of people have put forward a whole bunch of arguments, and there's a whole bunch of information about the Earth. And a lot doesn't matter doesn't matter what you think. There are a lot of bad arguments that support your position, and that's why, like, so most people think we live on a globe. The flat earthers are a minority. So when it comes to what you believe, if you hold the minority viewpoint, as long as the minority is small enough, you'll always be mocked for that viewpoint. And then one of the hurdles to get over with, like, flat earth is that there's so much bad information out there on flat earth, like so many arguments that are not good arguments. So it's easy as somebody who's getting into the topic, like at this stage, I think you're more likely to click on a bad flat earth video or to click on a good flat earth debunked video than to click on a good flat earth proved video. Because I mean, when I've looked over the subject, sort of the subsequent times, I've noticed that myself. Like, initially when I looked into flat earth, I thought we lived on a globe, obviously, and like I was softened up to the idea, you might say, by looking into the QAnon stuff and realizing that we'd been lied to about a whole bunch of things. So, but I still believed in the scientific reality at the time, and flat earth was kind of what brought me to God. Actually, it was a major topic that brought me to God. But yeah, so back at the time, I found some. I guess I was lucky. Happened to click on a few videos in the beginning of my search, which were good videos on flat Earth. But subsequently going through it, and the times I've gone through it, there are so many videos. Probably 90% of the flat Earth videos are actually bad videos on flat Earth, because I think you tend to see what you see what you want to see. You see things that are aligned with your current point of view, and so. There's so much bad information out there, and so it's hard to, like, I've told people about flat Earth, but it's hard to find good videos to give, because I mean there might be. It's hard to find a video which has only good information on flat Earth. Put it that way. Like, I've watched enough stuff to see that, sort of, to disprove some of to call into question the globe model, and then. That brings up what about NASA, and what about space? What about all the spacecraft and stuff? And then, so I've looked into that topic, and, the moon landing and things like that. And it's like, okay, well, I don't think the moon landing happened. I think there's fairly good evidence that was a hoax, or, can't say false flag. That was, done in a studio. That doesn't make sense. And then, look into it more in the International Space Station and how they seem to be manipulating the footage there. And I've dug a little bit into that, and it seems quite dodgy. And it's a big topic, and it goes into the Freemasons as well. A lot of the astronauts are Freemasons, and all of the stuff the questions that you would have about how could they possibly be doing that? How could that many people be lying? I've gone through that information, and sort of gone through some flat Earth things. I feel like I was lucky, and I think, obviously Jesus helped me to find the right things to look at, but it's not a clear cut. It's not clear cut. If you're getting into flat Earth now, it's more likely, as I said, you'll find bad information because and one of the things is, like, I think Mark Sargent was the first person to popularize sort of the current thrust of flat Earth research, and Mark Sargent isn't religious, or he's not Christian anyway. And so, I mean, there are probably a lot of people who got into it, or if you get it, like, he's one of the big names in flat Earth, let's say. So if you get into flat Earth, there's a reasonable chance that you'll get into it through him, and along with what he says, like, he has some good information, but then he also has, like, he's not leading you to God. And there are other, I don't want to go through all the names, but there are other people in the movement, and other people who believe that the Earth is flat, who they believe the Earth is flat, but they come at it from a non-biblical angle, and they lead people away from God, or to some other weird reality. And then I think there are a lot of people, like the Flat Earth Society, I think, I haven't looked too much into their stuff, but they're like they're kind of making fun of flat earthers, sort of mocking, or I can't remember what the term is. It's not good information. It's deliberately false information, and it's to muddy the waters, let's say. I think that it's something that, with all of the conspiracy stuff, there's a lot of information that's put out that's deliberately bad information. Like with the alien stuff, for example, there's a lot of information that seems to get released from, or leaked, you might say, from semi-official sources. There's all the different avenues in which you get information. Some of it, there'll be a government insider, or there'll be somebody who they've got information, they've got a source or something like that, or maybe there's an ex-government employee, or there's all these people that come out with the conspiracy things, and they have more information than you do, or they appear to have more information than you do, but they're disinformation people. Controlled opposition, I guess. There's a lot of that around for every topic. So I just wanted to point that out. It's one of the things you have to work through when you look into conspiracy things, is be careful of the bad information. And the other thing is, like I've said in previous videos, like talking about propaganda, and I was saying that like most of the information that comes out is propaganda. So I wanted to just clarify that point a bit. Because when I said propaganda, like I've got like shorthand ways of thinking about things. Like I'll say that something is satanic, or I'll say that something is propaganda, and I know what I mean when I say it, because I've got a sort of shorthand way of thinking about things. But I need to explain things a bit better to people who don't understand the internal shorthand I've got in my head. So when I say propaganda, like what I mean is, like I've said before, everything is controlled. I don't necessarily mean that, like everybody in the world, everybody in the media is sort of in on it with Satan. I mean, there's a worldview that's set up, and only certain things are allowed. It's like we're in prison, and it's a big prison, and there's a lot of freedom within the prison that we live in. And you can do whatever you want within reason. And so as long as you don't press too hard against what's going on, there's a fairly wide range of acceptable things that you can do within the system in which we live. And you can, as long as you don't threaten anybody that's too high up on the chain, you're allowed to do pretty much whatever you want. So when I say that everything is propaganda or something like that, what I mean is everything is, like, pretty much everything you see, and the average person is sort of part of this as well. There's a dominant worldview, and it might be different in different countries, or slight variations, but there's a general understanding of the way things work and what's going on, and almost everybody fits in within that paradigm, let's say. It's difficult to get information. Like, for example, like people believe in science. Most people believe in science, so it's a common thing that people would say is, what's your evidence for that? Or, or they might look up, what's they'll view the scientific truth as absolute truth. And so if you say something that contradicts with scientific truth, then they don't listen to you because their truth is scientific truth. Like that's what they base their truth on, is what do the scientists say. And yes, it's hard to like that. That's the what I mean. Like it's like a system in which people live, and most people like they don't even consider that the system might be wrong, might be broken, there might be some problems with the system. They don't question. They might question to a certain extent, but there's a limit to the extent that they're willing to question, and it's understandable because if you question too much, everything can unravel. You've got sort of your understanding is built on the fundamental truths, your fundamental truths. So we live on a planet and we revolve around the sun, and the moon revolves around the earth, and we live in a solar system and we're floating through space, and there was a explosion billions of years ago, and was it 13 billion years ago or something? 13.6 I think is the current figure. And well, you've got these fundamental truths, and then you work on from there, and you might question, is the government lying to us about 9/11? But you might, what happened in the financial crash in America in 2008 or whenever it was, or is that you question things to a certain extent, but it's difficult to accept because it's difficult to even comprehend when you start to understand. All right, the government is lying to you. The government is lying to you, but they wouldn't lie past a certain point. There's a certain point beyond which it's not possible that the government is lying, even though we don't trust the government. And big business, we don't trust big business, and we think they're kind of lying about things, and they're probably doing things that we don't know about, and they're corrupt. But there's a limit to which they're corrupt. They wouldn't go. They're not lying to us beyond a certain limit. We understand what the nature of reality is. We're not going to go beyond. They're not going to lie beyond a certain point because I've got it figured out enough to know that we live on a globe and we're going around the sun. And all of the mainstream stuff, the science shows and stuff, and all this information. There's so much information. How could it possibly not be true? Because that many people wouldn't be lying. And it's like, well, I mean, if you are asked about what reality is, if you have children, you're going to tell them about what reality is. Well, you're going to tell them probably, if you believe we live on a globe, or if you believe flat Earth, whatever your reality is, you're telling that, you're relaying that information. So you're sort of part of the system. You perpetuate the system, and you mock people who have a different point of view. So it's not just like you're not lying when you do that. That's what you believe. But that's the case for most people. And when you get up to the higher levels, the people at the higher levels of society, the world, they are closer to the truth. They know more of the truth, and so they're more culpable, you might say. Yeah. So it's sorry, I got interrupted. Yeah. So you're higher up in there's a control system, or not a control system. Well, there is a control system, but information propagates down from the top. So, if you think about the way the news works, I mean, there's some event that happens, and there's a certain amount of information that comes out, about that event because you weren't there. Most of the time when something happens in the world, you aren't there to witness it. So you're getting information from somewhere else, and there's a source of that information. There might be a number of sources, and but what people think about the event that happened is going to be determined in a large part by the information you get, obviously, and people have different interpretations, and you can look into You can look into events and get some idea of what's going on. But there's so much information for anything that happens. There's so much information that you would need to know in order to understand what's actually happening or what actually happened in that event. And there's a certain amount of information that you get. You don't get given enough a lot of the time to figure out what happened. There's all these events, all these things that happen in the world, and there's all these sort of aspects to reality. You can't. You have to rely on other people to inform you, and so it doesn't take that many people sort of at the top propagating down, the important ideas, the fundamental ideas. For that, if those ideas are wrong, it distorts everything else. So when I say everything is propaganda, I mean like everything is part of the control system, because I guess what I'm trying to say is the reality in which you think we live in is not the reality we live in. It's well, the way you determine your reality is based off the information that you're getting from other people to a large extent. It's not just your personal experience. And even if it was just your personal experience, you only experience a certain amount anyway. So yeah, like with flat Earth, I just wanted to come back to that because I was just watching a video. It was a video about somebody debunking flat Earth, and it was a good video from that. Like there was nothing wrong with the debunking. It was debunking bad flat Earth information, but it's painful. It's painful to watch because every time somebody puts out a bad proof, it hurts the truth. And there's so much bad proof, not just for flat Earth, but for anything. If you put out bad information, and then somebody disproves that information, well, that hurts the idea. The idea might be true. Might be true that we actually do live. The Earth is flat, but if 10 videos come out, and if you watch 10 videos on flat Earth, and they're all bad videos on flat Earth, and you can debunk all of them, then you're going to write off the idea, and you're not going to look at it again. Especially when you get something like flat Earth, which is it's such a mocked and a strained. It seems like a ridiculous topic because if people believe in space and they believe in satellites and they believe in we've gone to the moon and the solar system and Big Bang and etc. There's like a whole list of things that are fundamental beliefs, and you need good evidence to discard those things. So if you're looking into flat Earth, you really need to you kind of need to nail within one or two videos, maybe even the first video you watch needs to be a really good video on the topic. Otherwise, you're going to dismiss the idea because everybody that you know is going to laugh at the idea. So if you go to look into it and you get a bad flat Earth video, that's sort of it probably. And most videos on flat Earth are bad, especially now. It's disappointing that the people trying to make a career out of flat Earth. So if you're doing that, if you've got like a flat Earth channel, you're trying to put out enough videos to get your Patreon subscribers to donate, well, the likelihood that you're going to be able to come out with regular content and have it as good content that's worthy of being released, I mean, most of it's going to suck. It's going to be crap. And there are a lot of flat Earth channels out there, and they're not all good. Most of them are bad. So to broaden the point, though, when you're looking into to conspiracy type subjects, just be aware that with any of the topics that could be dangerous to the people in charge, there's a lot of misinformation out there. They will deliberately put out information that's wrong, and they'll also deliberately put out information that's partially right, and they'll distort the truth. just be careful and yeah, read the Bible. Read the Bible because that's the important thing. Read the Bible and get to know Jesus. Because without Jesus, you've got nothing really. So you can't really know anything in this world when it comes down to it. Like, depends on your standard of proof, but if you really want to know the truth and you really have a high standard, then you need to go right back to your fundamentals in order to prove everything. And when you do that, you realize how shaky the ground you're standing on is. Like, apart from, if you haven't directly experienced something, it's difficult to prove that it's true. And even the things that you do directly experience, it's difficult to properly contextualize those things a lot of the time. Yeah, anyway, God bless, and yeah, accept Jesus if you haven't.